Greetings. So by now, I'm sure we've all heard the debate on whether or not 100 men could beat one gorilla in a fight. So I'm here as your local scientist to explain precisely how and why these 100 men are absolutely going to beat this gorilla in a fight. Now, before I begin, allow me to introduce my special guest for today. We have Omar the orangutan, and we have Harambe the golden gorilla. Now, they may be a little upset with what I'm going to explain, but it is the truth. So to start, I'll do a quick overview of some of the science behind this. So what your mind may immediately jump to is the truth that a gorilla is much stronger than a human. The strongest man can bench press about 800 pounds, and a typical full-grown male gorilla is going to be 5 to 10 times stronger than the strongest person you've ever met. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that gorilla is also going to have a lot less stamina. Roughly half at best. Now, the science behind this has to do with the muscle structure, which I'll describe more in a longer video. But for now, keep in mind the low stamina of the gorilla, which is critical to the next part, which is the math. So let's talk about the size of the human versus the gorilla. So we have an artist rendering of a typical tough guy. Say he's 5'9" to 6 feet tall. He has a high top fade, because obviously only someone with a high top fade would have the audacity to fight a gorilla. So, the gorilla may not be quite as big as you think. The typical gorilla on its hind legs is about my height, about 5'7", but a lot heavier, probably about 3 times as heavy as a typical bodybuilder. So, the gorilla is also going to be pretty wide. So, if we think about the structure of this battle, there's no way that all 100 men could attack at once. So, let's just draw a couple of attackers of this approximate size around the gorilla. The space gets filled up, so realistically, only about 5 men would be able to attack this gorilla at one time. So if you think about it, they're probably going to be fighting in waves, and we'll keep 5 in mind. So the second thing to consider is how long can this gorilla fight? Now again, we mentioned that gorillas have low stamina. The best estimate is that a gorilla can exert high intensity physical force and running for only about 1 to 2 minutes. So let's think about how that would work out. So you'll have the gorilla down here fighting for his life, and you'll have a wave of 5 men attack. Now these 5 men are going to get dispensed immediately. So it's pretty reasonable to assume that these 5 men, even in this fight, can last about 30 seconds. So after that happens, you're going to have another 5 attack. They get wiped out. Then 1 minute has gone by. Then another 5. We got 1.5 minutes. They get wiped out. And then another 5. So by the time this last 5 gets wiped out, the 2 minutes are up. The gorilla will be exhausted and be unable to keep up that fight. So that means that if we count this up, after that gorilla beats up 20 men, he's going to be out of energy. And so the next group can attack at will without much resistance from the gorilla. Now, gorillas have thicker skin and thicker muscle structure, so it's going to be a little bit tougher for humans to actually inflict pain and damage on the gorilla. So let's say we need an additional 5 people on top of the next 5 that attack. So let's just say we're going to add 10 people. So then that comes to 30. Now, with any typical biological estimate, you want to consider a little bit of error because you're typically not perfectly correct on your first guess. And a good estimate is about 20%. So if we add 20% to that, that's going to give us a total of 36 people. And this is my best estimate of how many people it's going to take to beat this gorilla. Now let's just say I'm completely wrong. My estimate is way off. And let's say these groups of 5 can only last 15 seconds. All right, well, let's just double this 36. And that brings you to 72. So even if these 72 were barely enough to get the job done, there's still 28 men left in reserve to continue the fight. Now, when you keep these numbers in mind, it's pretty obvious that this gorilla is just not going to win. Thank you for your time.